What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 146.
146.
It's Monday, January 20th, 2025. Josh Callaway, James D. Jackson, Tom Green with you on a Monday. Continuing our position status report series today. We're going over the wide receivers. Interesting conversation there, I believe. That's a major overhauled spot. We'll break it down for you as we have each position. We continue to do so over the next couple of months. The latest headlines for you football. Jim Knowles, is that a thing? He commented on it. We'll react to that and kind of give our final thoughts there before the national championship tonight and seemingly a resolution coming there soon. Also some more front office, I guess, for lack of a better term, shakeups for Oklahoma. Curtis Lofton steps down as GM. We'll react there. We'll also recap the latest for both OU men's and women's basketball. So a nice tidy Monday show. But gentlemen, let's get into the stats report series first. It's how we've kind of been kicking off these last couple of shows. If you haven't with us, they're still there. They're evergreen, where we kind of go through each position. We recap it, kind of give a little temperature check as we go through the next couple of months leading up to the start of spring practices. We've done quarterbacks and running backs. Let's do wide receivers today, fellas. This is going to be a weird one because this position, how do you grade it in 2024? I mean, obviously it was horrible, but injuries were the massive part of that, as well documented. Everyone knows Oklahoma's top 5 receivers were out a lot of the season. At the very least, 4 of them were pretty much the entire year. Deion Burks obviously played some, but for the most part, the other 4 guys, Jalil Farouk, Angelo Anthony, Nick Anderson, Jane Gibson, missed the entire season for the most part for all 4 of those guys. Obviously, you bring in 4 transfer wideouts. You bring in Deion Burks back. You sold some young guys coming up the wings. What's some kind of general thoughts here on this wide receiver room? I mean, it's a big year for Emmett Jones because his, was, I think, maybe the highest approval rating of any position coach, and now it's kind of more uneasy after what was obviously a disaster season for the wide receiver room.
Yeah, I mean, if you just showed me on paper before last season, like Oklahoma's receiver room compared to what it is now, I would give the edge to last season's group. But of course, last season happened, all the injuries, the lack of production from, just the position as a whole and really the offense at large. It's an interesting group. Obviously they didn't really add any like giant splashy guys in the portal this year. I think, retaining Deion Burks was kind of your splashy move. You're going to get Jaden Gibson back from that patellar injury. That's obviously crucial. He missed the whole year. But I'm intrigued by some of what they're bringing in. Guys like Javonte Gibson and Keontez Lewis. Like I like the size that they have. Long term, I like the potential of a Josiah Martin, who played a little bit at Cal this year, and we saw, especially in the bowl game, some of that speed that he has. And then you have a guy like Isaiah Satania, who's got some SEC experience coming in and has produced. So it's an intriguing group. I think a lot of it depends on is Deion Burks going to be the guy that he was at Purdue? The guy that we saw maybe those first 2 weeks of the season before he got dinged up. Is Jaden Gibson going to be back to what he was in 2023? I know that patellar injury is tough to come back from, but he's been working behind the scenes trying to get better. I know he was back home in Orlando doing a lot of rehab stuff around the holidays too. If they can get those guys back to what they expect them to be, I think the floor on this group certainly raises, and probably the ceiling too.
I'm at a point to where I feel exactly how I felt 2 years ago when we brought this up about the receiver room. They're just unproven right now. We don't really know what these guys are going to do. Now, we saw, these guys do things individually in the past, last season, things like that. But as a collective, we don't know exactly what they're going to do. So that's kind of where I'm at on this. There are interesting parts of this, as Tom just laid out. Isaiah Satanga is one of the newcomers that I'm really interested in seeing. I like what I saw from him, just his speed and things like that. And I'm very high on Elijah Thomas from Shakota out here in Oklahoma. Yep. I mean, guys like that. And then you bring in guys like, you bring back guys like Deion Burks and Gibson and things like that. Those are really, really good guys to bring back and to be, focal points of this unit. But it's just like you're at a point to where you don't know what's going to happen. So that's going to be like one of those groups that we really have to pay attention to, which is the complete opposite of how we felt or how I felt last year going into this, that season. So that's where I'm at on this group overall.
No, I agree. I mean, one of the bigger question marks on the roster, I think, is fair. I mean, can Javonte Gibson or Keontez Lewis be guys for you? Maybe, but I don't know. I mean, it's a big jump going to the SEC, and like you guys have both mentioned, Josiah Martin and Isaiah Satania come from other Power 5 places. So maybe the transition, they can be guys who are away. Can Deion Brooks remain healthy? Does Jaden Gibson look like the guy we saw before? Obviously, he had a brutal injury. He was out the whole year. It's a tough one to come back from. Can he be himself? And then can any of these young guys step up? Can Zion Kearney make a leap? We saw Ivan Carry-On in the bowl do some nice things. Can he build on that? Can these freshmen make an impact? Like, it's just a lot of questions. So relative to this past year, I don't know how you could possibly feel better going into the year. Because going into the year, we thought this was the best position maybe on the roster. Now, so we don't know how it's going to play out.
Yeah,
with the injuries. But, compared to that, on paper, the names, you certainly felt phenomenal about Nick Anderson and Angelo Anthony and Jaden Gibson and Jalil Farouk. It obviously didn't play out that way because they were all hurt. So we'll see. But how do you guys, agreement there, man? Relative on paper names to names, it's hard to say that this year's group looks like a better one on paper. But again, can you just remain healthy? And that's an improvement right there. If you can just
exactly. And that's a good point that you bring up Avion Carry-On, because we saw really good things from him in the bowl game. And maybe that's a sign that this guy's starting to understand his role, how to, really accomplish that. And maybe OU can use him a lot more, because we had all saw it. The size this guy's had, it's something that you got to be able to use, especially in this conference, a guy like that. And he was able to use it in the bowl game. So just keep on moving with that. That's a pretty good part too.
Yeah, I will say with this whole, kind of makeover of the wide receiver room, from what they had available last year to what they have available currently going into the spring, there's more size. They were missing size with Nick Anderson out, with Jaden Gibson out. But now you bringing in, a couple longer receivers, guys like Giovanni Gibson, Keontae Lewis, bringing Ivan Carry-On back. If you can get Jaden Gibson back, you have more size there that you really lacked. And it seemed like they really missed having some of those bigger bodied receivers available last season, because you were often relying on guys like, Jacob Jordan, he did what he was able to do as a walk-on in the slot, but you're relying on him. You're relying on, Deion Burks, who's a little bit of a smaller guy, Zion Raggins, a smaller guy. You need some big body receivers against these really big physical SEC corners. And they were just lacking that this year. So I think that's one of the things that they tried to prioritize in some of these portal finds.
Sure. Definitely. So we'll see. Obviously you would think too, a greater emphasis on this room, and we'll do the tight ends next week. But with the way the tight end room is right now, you're kind of wondering where the pass catchers are. So, who's catching passes for the running backs? We saw Taylor Tatum can do that a little bit, but I don't know. So we'll see. It's a prove it year, certainly for Emmett Jones. Not really totally fair because, again, the injuries just nuked that room. But, a year ago, I said it before, I think he probably had one of the highest approval ratings of any position coach after his first year. Now more people are kind of wondering, we need to see it again, basically. So we'll see. And we'll keep rolling with the offense. Like I said, tight ends we'll do next week. That's a position that's got even more question marks, I think, than the
which is, to his point, it's very hard to develop guys that are injured. That's also a case too. So it's you didn't expect guys that played.
It's not fair.
Yeah,
it's not fair. But the tough part is in the year of our Lord 2024, when there's guys like Jeremiah Smith and guys like Ryan Williams who just come in as true freshmen are just insane. OU fans wanted that from Zion Kearney and from Zion, which isn't fair. But you look around the country, you see these freshmen just lighting it up. And Oklahoma, who's having to rely on freshmen, couldn't really get it done. I saw that a lot.
That's my point too.
Why can't our freshmen come in and you know what I mean? So
yeah, they didn't expect those guys. That's the thing too. Alabama, they expected those guys to play. OU did not. So it's you don't get the reps with the first team, in practice beforehand. So that also plays a part as well. But I get your point though. Yeah,
Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith are anomalies. In the big scheme, you could have freshman contributors, but those guys are NFL ready coming out of high school, and it's been discussed so many times. Ryan Williams was only 17 years old. 17. Probably if he was eligible for the draft, he'd probably be the number 1, number 2 pick right now.
For sure.
They're the exception, not the rule.
100%. So we'll see. Big year for the wide receivers. And again, if you just keep Deion Burks healthy right there, you're in good shape. Let's talk about some other football stuff. Colin and I did the show last Thursday. We talked at length about Jim Knowles and his candidacy, the Ohio State defensive coordinator potentially for OU's opening. Suggest everyone catch up on that conversation. We really went in depth there. But I wanted to bring it up, guys, again, to get both of your guys' thoughts on just kind of all of it, but also with the backdrop of what Jim Knowles had to say on Saturday. So obviously everyone knows Ohio State's in the national championship game tonight, playing Notre Dame. Jim Knowles on Saturday, they're having, kind of press conference media availabilities leading up to the start or leading up to the championship game tonight. This is what he said. He was asked directly about the OU job, and he basically just sidestepped it. This is the exact quote. Beat Notre Dame. That's all I'm focused on. These things happen. I guess when you have success, players are making plays. My job is to put them in the best position. These things come up when you do well. So basically a total non-denial, right? I mean, he could have shot it down and he didn't. Does that mean anything? I don't know. That's why I'm going to ask you guys your thoughts on kind of all of it. And, I'm assuming, maybe you shouldn't assume, but I'm assuming that a resolution is going to come through very soon here. The championship game is finally tonight. If Oklahoma thinks they have a shot at Jim Knowles, which I personally believe that they at least think that they do, we should know who the next defensive coordinator is very quick after this game. I think in the next couple of days. Either it's going to be Jim or they're going to be able to move on to something else. Your guys read on the comments, just this entire search. It's been very tight-lipped, just all of it as, again, seemingly it's coming toward the end of it here.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are layers and some nuance to kind of parsing what he said.
Yeah.
Like on the one hand, like you said, it wasn't a denial.
Mm-hmm.
It was largely coach speak. We heard, similar comments from Zach Alley right after the Armed Forces Bowl.
Right.
You could argue that Zach Alley's comments were maybe even a little bit more firm about coming back to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And then we see 24 hours later, he's off to West Virginia. But on the one hand, it's like, besides just shooting it down, like, what do you want Jim Knowles to say 2 days before his defense is playing for the national championship? Like, it's a very diplomatic response in some way, and it's a very common response that we see from coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, like, if you're his agent, you're not going to just shoot down any discussions because it's a leverage chip at worst. He's already the third highest paid assistant in college football, third highest paid defensive coordinator in college football this year. But when other schools come calling, even if you aren't necessarily interested, don't shoot it down because you're still trying to leverage for another contract extension, another raise. Like, it's smart business for him to not shoot it down, even if there are, conversations behind the scenes, which, seem, where there's smoke, there's fire. Like I think that a resolution will finally come in the next, couple days. Once this season gets over and that national championship game is behind him, we'll see what happens. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the idea. Like, if you can get Jim Knowles, I think that is fantastic. The why you're getting Jim Knowles is still kind of weird. Like, unless Brent Venables is like prepared to, relinquish a little bit more control of that defense, like, it doesn't make a ton of sense. But it's a hell of a hire if you get it. Like, if you can make it work, you make it work. But why you're trying to go after him when we were just discussing, like, Zach Alley came in as basically Brent's disciple. Ted Roof was kind of just like a yes man to handle
a shift. Yeah.
To do that. We've talked about Wes Goodwin coming in and his relationship with Brent Venables and how he'd kind of be, a Zach Alley light type of guy coming in. And now you're going from that to a 30-year coaching veteran who is one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. It's just a really weird philosophical shift in approaching it. And maybe one that, nobody kind of perceived when, Zach Alley left 3 weeks ago at first, but things obviously change. Discussions happen. If you can land Jim Knowles, I think it's an incredible hire. And we'll see what the dynamics would be if that were to happen.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess in terms of the philosophical shift, I mean, it's my understanding that Brent Venables doesn't necessarily want to have his hands in the defensive side of things. He wants to be more of a CEO type of situation for the team, and just bring a guy like that in that can call plays at a high level. You can trust him, especially with the guys that OU has coming back on the defensive side. You would be fairly comfortable with that situation, especially as Brent Venables, and things like that. But in terms of the question asked to Jim Knowles, I mean, as you said, when there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, because the way he answered it, Oklahoma fans have seen this for quite some time now, last couple of years. Lincoln Riley, I think we asked Jeff Libby about Mississippi State beforehand as well, and Zach Alley now. You kind of see it. You kind of know the patterns and you hear that. And that them not denying it is something there, because say somebody asked about New Mexico State or something like that, just something crazy. He'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, why would you ask me something like that? That's kind of like things you're expecting him to say if it wasn't something on the table at this point in time. I think it is on the table. I think he's looking to see what's going to happen after this game. Obviously, what are the moving parts for Ohio State? Is Ryan Day going to the NFL? All those type of things play a factor in your roles, and that's why you say pretty much no comment right now. Just wait and see situation. I think that's where it's at for Jim Knowles, and I, like you said, it would be a great get for OU because it takes a lot off of Brent Venables. Focus on being a CEO of the team, head coach, and just be the head coach and things like that. And I think it'll work out the best for him. So that's pretty much where it is right now.
It's interesting. It's fascinating. It's certainly a direction that nobody thought they would go when Zach left. Everyone kind of figured it'll be a safe hire, maybe from within, somebody Brent knows, just kind of keep it simple, basically. And then Jim Knowles is the complete opposite of that. It's a massive swing for the fences. I mean, it's the biggest name you could have possibly got, essentially. And we'll see. I mean, it's fascinating. I brought it up on Thursday with Colin. Does it make financial sense to sink this much money in a defensive coordinator when you have other needs, theoretically, roster, everything else? But again, at the same time, to Tom's point, nobody's going to sit here and say, what are they doing if it happens? Because man can coach defense at a very high level. And look, schematically, it's not really that far off what Brent Venables likes to do. So it's not like some massive philosophical X's and O's difference either. So, you could see the two working together well from that regard. It's interesting. And if it happens, I don't know how you could have possibly landed on your feet any better than when Zach Alley left. You not only landed on your feet, you upgraded. You have to consider that a massive upgrade. We all think Zach Alley is a really good coach, but Jim Knowles is as good of a DC as there is in the sport right now.
Yeah,
so it's crazy, and we'll see if it happens. And obviously, if it does, we'll try and get an instant reaction show going. But we'll see. It's interesting times. Any other thoughts here? Again, hopefully resolution coming soon.
It kind of makes you think, like, should OU fans root for Ohio State in this national championship game? Like, it would be more of like Jim Knowles getting the job done there. Now he can think about other opportunities. Maybe is that kind of the way OU fans would look at it, do you think, going into this game?
I don't know.
That's kind of like.
Maybe. I don't know. Is he distracted?
Exactly. If they get blown out, is he thinking about OU this whole time?
Who knows? Because you saw the last, it's been joked about, but the last few Washington State games, offense wasn't great. Was Ben Arbuckle distracted? You kind of wonder when guys come for other jobs. So we'll see. I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
I think the other layer to it to kind of wonder about is if Jim Knowles does take the job, do any Ohio State defensive players follow him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know Oklahoma doesn't need a lot on that side of the ball. Still would like to get a defensive tackle. Still would like to get another cornerback in there. Like, something to monitor.
Mm-hmm.
Something to monitor. Maybe a linebacker. You'll take it. You'll take it, to say the least. We shall see. And keep up with Sooners Illustrated, Oklahoma247sports.com. When we know, you'll know on this defensive coordinator search, which has been way longer than anybody thought it would be. But maybe there's a reason. Another quick little football headline here before we do some basketball. Curtis Lofton stepped down as general manager a couple of days ago. This was expected. We talked about this on the VIP boards back in December. It had kind of come up that there were some rumors that Curtis might be stepping aside or being let go or something. Basically, the way we kind of brought it then was he's still around, but probably not going to be around super long term. That finally came to a head in this past week as he stepped down. It really was just a question of would he stay within the program in a different role or just get out completely. He's getting out completely. Thoughts here, guys? Obviously, again, kind of same thing we talk about Chuck Lilly. It's hard to know all the ins and outs of what each guy's individual role is. The only thing you can say about Curtis Lofton for sure is that he's extremely well-liked. He's a former OU player. Everyone who's gotten to know Curtis at all, gotten to meet him, says very high things of him. He's been in the program for a while now, being a big part of the Soul Mission, things like that under Brent Venables. So he moves on, and now another kind of interesting hire/change this offseason is who Oklahoma gets to replace him as the program's GM. But thoughts on kind of all of this? A little bit of reaction from you guys on Curtis Lofton stepping away.
Yeah, like you said, wasn't really unexpected.
No.
We kind of heard rumblings about it for a while. Hats off to Curtis because, when he took that job, he became the first GM in program history.
Mhm.
And, when you're the first of something, a brand new job, the role isn't always clearly defined. What success looks like in that role isn't always clearly defined, but he took on that challenge and, kind of helped Oklahoma sort through these, first, 7, 8, 9 months of what this new age of, a front office will look like for them. They're obviously going to, try to bring in another general manager. We'll see where they go with that. We know they're working closely still with former Philadelphia Eagles front office executive Jake Rosenberg and his group. Still a lot of moving parts there, a lot of restructuring. So we'll see kind of how that works out. When everything does get sorted out, it would be nice to just get a little bit more transparency from the Oklahoma side about kind of what it all looks like and what it all means, aside from just, okay, Curtis is the GM, Chuck Lilly's the assistant GM, we're doing a new recruiting arm, but not real clarity on what everything goes with that. I think the fans would probably have a better grasp of it if Oklahoma came out and just gave a better idea of, what everybody's jobs are, how everybody's working in concert with each other, and just what this next iteration of a college football pro model front office actually looks like and what the goals are.
Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much it of it all. I mean, Lofton came in and kind of laid the foundation for what that kind of job is going to entail, and now he gets to move on and do maybe something he really wants to do. I mean, going to ministry and things like that, that's obviously a good thing for him, wanting to pursue that goal and being able to do it, and just setting this groundbreaking role for OU. And he was one of the first in college football as well with the new ages and things like that. Just like being a general manager for a college football team, was a pretty good situation for him. So got to move on, but we'll see what happens next with, the next guys and things like that.
And look, if Curtis wants to get back into football at some point, he very easily will be able to do that.
Yeah.
Guy played in the NFL for a long time. Like he knows the sport, and again, very well respected and liked. So wouldn't close that door. Still a young guy, so we'll see what happens on the road. But yeah, Oklahoma, another hire they have to make this offseason, another change. We'll see who they bring into that role and when. What kind of urgency is there to do that? We'll find out sooner rather than later, you would think. Shift over to some basketball before we go. We'll start with the men. Tom, they're on the board. They beat South Carolina on Saturday. The Texas game the previous Wednesday was not good. I talked about it on the last Monday show that was a gut check game, and they came out just awful. Looked like they were going to get blown out of the building. They were getting blown out of the building, down by, was it 25 at one point? 23.
With about 16 minutes left.
They got back in it. Big comeback. They actually had the ball down, one score late, had a chance, but obviously lost the game. They did bounce back on Saturday against South Carolina. That was an absolute, it's over if you lose game to South Carolina. They did take care of business, played pretty well in the second half, won that game by 20. You got the week off. They go to Arkansas on Saturday, and then they got some really tough games coming up. A little temperature check for you. Obviously, it's not great. It feels nice for them that they got on the board and played well and got a win, but it felt like they needed both of these games. Where are you kind of at with the future prospects for this team moving forward? And again, some really tough games coming up.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly would have liked to win both of those games and kind of go into this bye week on a 2-game winning streak with both of those games that you had at home. Fortunately, your next game, look, Bud Walton Arena, Arkansas is not an easy place to play by any means, but Arkansas has not looked very good. They're 0-5 in SEC play. The only other winless team in SEC is South Carolina right now, which Oklahoma just beat by 20. Look, they needed that win against South Carolina, and Porter Moser said afterwards, like, the understatement of the century is that they needed that win badly. And if you look at just kind of like the projections and the metrics behind it, if Oklahoma had lost that game, they went into that game, I think, with like a 41% chance to make the NCAA tournament. If they had lost, their chances would have fallen to 15%.
Man,
winning it just boosted it to like 46% or so.
Yeah.
But if you lose that game, like
it was a can't lose. Yeah.
it is a can't lose game. The good news for Oklahoma remains that because the SEC is so strong, with 13 regular season games left, they still currently have 11 quad one opportunities in front of them. So you have a chance to steal some games and like really build your tournament resume. Pretty much all the projections still have them in the tournament, hanging on by a thread at this point. But they have a chance to kind of bounce back. I think there was some good things to take out of this week, even though you only split the games. The medal that they showed those last 16 minutes against Texas, I think was promising. It's like, okay, this team isn't necessarily going to just go out and fold. Jalen Moore, when he's aggressive, it's just so much of a better player. Like he can't always just sit back and let the game come to him like we saw earlier in the season. Like when he's out there attacking, he is so much better. Had a career 29 points against Texas, followed it up with a big game against South Carolina, where he was just attacking and getting to the line. I think he drew 8 fouls, shot 11 free throws, pulled down 8 rebounds, 20 plus points again. And the other thing is, look, Jeremiah Fierce finally got over the hump. It seems like, he had that dreadful stretch to start SEC play, bounced back with, a 20 plus point performance against Texas, had a near triple double against South Carolina, had career highs in rebounds with 9 assists and 8. And most importantly, did not turn the ball over in the second half. Oklahoma as a team only had 1 turnover in the second half of that game. And that's when they really just pulled away, because that first half was just ugly basketball by both teams. They combined for more turnovers than made baskets. I think it was like 23-22. Oklahoma in the second half, just 1 turnover and just hit the throttle, pulled away by 20, and just finally got that monkey off their back and finally won a game. On the one hand, it's nice that they have a midweek bye to kind of like regroup after all that. On the other hand, after you get that win, it would be nice to be able to, get back on the floor as quick as you can and carry it over. So we'll see how they respond with a few days off heading into, what is another winnable game, but another must-win game for them in Arkansas.
I agree totally. At least they get to bask in the good vibes for a little bit. As a society, I think we need to respect Jalen Moore more. I mentioned in non-conference play, Jeremiah Fierce is their best player, and he was in non-conference play, and he is certainly the most talented guy. I mean, he's going to be a lottery pick. But Jalen Moore is the guy. He's the guy who makes it go. He was just willing them back in the game against Texas. Monster second half. He was phenomenal again against South Carolina. You can see the urgency with him. Like, as an old guy, this is it. Like, he is refusing to, like, let it. He's like, I'm going to do everything. I'm just going to win us games by myself. Like, I'm just going to throw everyone on my back and try to carry us to the tournament, basically, with just brute force and will, basically, because he just punches away to the rim. Like, he's a really fun player to watch. And he's the leader. After that tough Texas game, he did post-game and just answered every tough question. He's the face of this thing right now. And we knew he would be, but he stepped into that really, really well. And, yeah, we'll see what happens, this week with Arkansas. You're going to have to win a road game at some point because you lost 2 home games already, and you look at their road games, not good. It's not pretty. I mean, they got to go to College Station. They got to go to Auburn, Missouri, Florida, Austin, Ole Miss. Those are all brutally tough road games. So, again, Fayetteville is really tough, but Arkansas hasn't been playing well. So this is probably, if you're going to get a road game, this is probably the time to do it. So we'll see. Big game coming up for them this weekend. Got the week off until then on Saturday in Fayetteville. As for the women, James, so they took care of business against Missouri on Thursday night at home. Got above 500 in SEC play. Then the big game. They go to Columbia to face number 2 South Carolina, who is, everyone knows. They're the class of college basketball, women's college basketball. It didn't go well. They lost by 1 million. James, it's a road game. I think it was a sellout. I think they said it was.
That's what they said. Yeah,
it was at the very least a huge crowd, but I think sellout.
And I talked to an Oklahoma representative out there, and they said, yeah, this is the loudest game I've been to, like, in person, in terms of women's basketball. So it was that type of environment that OU played in.
And then obviously they're just insanely good. I mean, they're a legitimate national title contender every year under Don Staley. They are essentially UConn, what UConn used to be. And UConn's still great, but they are modern day UConn.
Yeah.
So they got blown out. your thoughts from this game and the Missouri game, kind of roll them up into one. I mean, is it just a simple case of they didn't play well and South Carolina is insanely good and this is what happens, or was it bigger issues of? Yeah, I know all. I mean, your thoughts.
It kind of all plays a part here. Now, when I was doing the game preview for South Carolina, you notice that there are 5 players that average around 10 to 11 points. And then you have 2 more players that average around 8 to 7 points. So you're like, okay, that means everybody on this team can at any point in time be the leading scorer, and it's a very balanced situation. So you're not going to have an off night from South Carolina. So the only way to beat them, I guess, is to slow it down and try to, just grudge a win out, especially on a road environment like that. That was something OU could not do because, as we all know, Oklahoma loves to play fast. They love to play fast, push the tempo, and it's kind of why they have so many turnovers every game, although they have one of the best, assists to points ratio in the league as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, all those things kind of play a part. And it was just weird that you didn't get the one thing, the one area OU played bad, and I would say is Peyton Verhulst had a very bad, poor shooting night against South Carolina. Now, against Missouri, she had one of the best in the nation. She had 38 points, which is like 5th in OU's, record books and things like that against Missouri, but it just didn't carry over into Sunday. Now, all this is going on during the week where Reagan Beers, your All-American center, is banged up. She got hurt last week. Her shoulder's been out. She didn't practice until the day before Missouri, and you didn't even know if she was going to play a lot, which she did not play a lot against Missouri. She was on a limited, a minutes restricted situation. And then now you have to go into South Carolina, kind of banged up a little bit with your best player. And then, your second best player in Peyton Verhulst has a bad shooting night. So it's a little bit of all those that you just pointed out, Josh. Like, you didn't play their best. South Carolina's a juggernaut in terms of basketball, and just they were on the road in a very hard environment. And so those type of things happen. Now OU's, falling again in the AP poll to number 15 now, which I think is a very worthy spot for them at this point in time, because they've had some really good moments, some really bad moments. You're like middle of the road right now. You're middle of the pack. So that's exactly where I think they should be. But it's going to be a lot to see where they go from here. They got Georgia coming up this week, LSU after that, which is a very, very big game. It's another one of those Texas type of games. You try to beat those teams. And so you'll have to see where they're at. They have to fix these turnover issues. They have to, because as we've said, it works against those lesser opponents. It is not very effective against teams like South Carolina, Texas, maybe LSU, like those type of teams. You cannot have those issues. And so OU will have to learn how to play a little slower. They're going to have to learn how to do that, learn how to play the half-court offense more, get Reagan Beers the ball, kind of in the high post a little bit more, because she does very well in that area as well as the low post. With the high post, I think it helps out the offense a lot, where you can get guards like Sahara Williams open for 3, Lexi Keys, those type of guards, and Skylar Van to get a little bit more touches. She hasn't been the player that she was last year at this point in time. I mean, that's just what it is. She's more deferring, and I think that's kind of what we asked Gina Baranczyk. She's more deferring than she was last year, where she was taking more control. So you want to see more from her as well. So, like, all those kind of things play a part in what this Oklahoma team can be down the stretch, because it's getting to that point.
Yeah, this is where that Texas game starts to sting a little more, and we knew it would. They had a chance to win that game. Mississippi State as well. That's another one that's, stinging with you, because, these games are going to happen. It's been one thing under Jenny Baranczyk that if you were going to knock her at all, which there's very little to knock her on, because it's been incredible what she's done with the program. They do have a tendency to sometimes, when things fall off, to really fall off. They've gotten beat by a huge number like once a year. So these games are going to happen somewhere with kind of the way they go. It's like they have a cold shooting night, they turn it over, and this happens. And South Carolina is obviously great. So, the couple of games that they had that were winnable that they didn't get kind of sting right now, because you're 3-3 in SEC play and you feel like you're better than that. So we'll see. Like you said, they also, like the men, have the week off. They don't play again until Sunday when they play Georgia. And then, like you said, huge road game at LSU. LSU's number 5 in the AP poll right now. So another big test, big chance. SEC is a legit basketball league in men and women. So there's big games and opportunities aplenty for them to rack up. They have another big home game after that with Kentucky. I might try to get out to that game that following Sunday. So, opportunities are still coming up. They have a plenty of chance to pad their resume and get back into the SEC race. But you put yourself in a little bit of a hole by a couple of winnable games that you lost, and then this team, which was always going to be tough, you would have hoped to put up a better fight. we'll see. But still things to be encouraged by. But that was a little bit of a humbling, like, okay, that's what legit national championship level good looks like. And that kind of shows you where they still need to improve.
And that's one of the things I asked Jenna Baranczyk, and I think you were there as well. I asked Jenna Baranczyk about it. It was just like, what is it like practicing and trying to prepare for this type of week without, Reagan Beers, you don't know if she's going to be available or not. And a lot of the OU's turnovers are just trying to get the ball inside. They kind of just throw the ball away. It looks like on TV, like they just throw out of bounds. It's not like they're getting stripped a lot. It's just them throwing the ball away. And so you see that over and over again. And Jenna Baranczyk talked about it, that we didn't have her before the season either. Like it was like they had her before the season, but they didn't have her a lot of times before the season.
Yeah, she was injured. Camp.
In camp. So like it all plays a part. And she was like, that's kind of why people are still seeing these type of situations. Like I know a lot of people are asking why this problem is still happening. That's one of the leading factors. It's pretty much that. And so not having that going into South Carolina is rough. It's rough. So you see what happens.
I think that's it. Week off from hoops. Both teams don't play again until the weekend, so a little bit of a recharge your batteries. Go ready for the home stretch for both of those teams. Back half of SEC play coming up as we get ready to shift into February. Colin and I will be back on the show on Wednesday. It's going to be a Wednesday show this week. I got some high school basketball duties later in the week, so we're going to do the show a day early on Wednesday. Going to have some recruiting stuff to talk about there. Junior Day is this weekend for Oklahoma, so we'll preview all of that and hit on some other stuff on Wednesday with Colin. Like I said a couple times, we plan to hopefully, maybe if it all falls together, have an instant reaction show whenever the DC hire is made. So keep an eye out for that whenever that news breaks, whenever that is. Could be tomorrow, could be later this week, could be maybe never. Maybe they just never hire one. I don't know. Think that's it. For Tom Green, James D. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway signing off for now. We'll see you next time right back here on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.
See you.